The 2024 Polyglot Gathering is brought to you by Glossica.
There we are. All right, so today I'm going to focus on a group of languages which you would think learning one wouldn't necessarily help you learn the others. Now, people who have some knowledge about Asian languages would say, well, of course, Thai and Lao are closely related. The mutual intelligibility is sort of like Czech and Slovak. And then, of course, Indonesian and Malay in the same way. But do you realize structurally, you start in China, and you go all the way down to Southeast Asia, and you have a similar structure. Now, that would include Khmer and Burmese, but I don't speak Khmer and Burmese. I stick to languages I know so that I don't mess up too much. Okay, so you can see they're from different families, different language groups, and so 4 tonals and 2 non-tonals. Next, please. Or I'm supposed to change it? Oh, sorry. I just hit this thing here, right? No, like that. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go through some various points. And the first one is that you have no verbal tense. There's no conjugation, okay? They don't inflect at all. Slavic speakers, do you have any inflections? Everywhere, right? Yeah, everything. But there's no inflections to indicate anything about the grammar, anything about tense, etc. So how do you deal with this? I think the important thing to realize is that when the languages you know, of course they form certain neural networks in relation to how words go together, how meaning is created. So the important thing here is I'm going to show you when you learn one of these languages, you're starting to create a certain pattern of neural networks that creates meaning without inflections. Okay, so first of all, we use context markers. So you would think, like, for example, if it's always I eat, how do we know it's future, past, or whatever? Well, one thing we can use is context. For example, we can say in English, the English doesn't have present tense. All right, that's the problem. It only has past and non-past. Okay, so I go, or more naturally, I'm going normally, or we would have, in this case, if I say, the example, I go to the store, is different than I went to the store. You're going to change it. I don't even need the context mark of yesterday. You know it's past tense, right? But in these languages, you're going to have to use something that indicates the time. This morning, yesterday, last month, etc. Okay? So let's take like a look at Chinese here. For the same things, 我住商店. Okay, so I don't know if that 我住商店是现在, right now, or yesterday, whatever. I have nothing. That's always said here. Okay, but if I say 我昨天去商店, so you see the blue is the verb, and then the red is this context marker for yesterday. Now, we have these in all the languages. I'm going to go through them, okay? So, of course, now, Vietnamese and Chinese not only have the same type of structure, they, just like Korean and Japanese, 50 to 60% of total vocabulary is of Sino origin. Okay, so here we have the same situation where D is the verb, okay? Doi den ge hang. And then hôm qua, so yesterday. Hôm qua doi đi ge hang. And then for Thai, then we had the verb by here. So cham bai rang ka, or cham bai rang ka mơ wan ni, and then mơ wan ni being yesterday. Now I want you to watch what I do Lao to show how related they are. Okay, try to remember that one. Okay, so koi bai han. All right, and then mơ wan. You had mơ wan ni. Now you have mơ wan up front. Okay, mơ wan koi bai han. And now, let's look at Indonesian Malay. And we have Indonesian, and notice the similarities that we're going to have here. Saya pergi ke toko. Then kemarin is yesterday. Kemarin saya pergi ke toko. Okay. And then in Lao, very similar, koi for I, Koi Bai Han. Oh, I already went to going the wrong. Why I'm looking and not even thinking what I'm saying there. When I say, okay, we have it here. Malay. Okay. Unless. Okay, yeah, so the only difference that you're going to have in Malay is the final part here. Then you have kedai for toko, for the store. Otherwise, it's the same. Oh, sorry. So semalam is yesterday. So we had here kemarin and semalam. All right. Now, that's easy, right? You would understand that the best way to indicate time would be with some reference. Tomorrow, yesterday, 9 o'clock, whatever. Okay, now, what about more complicated concepts where you don't have necessarily a time frame, okay? So here, when we use aspect markers, it's not tense. It's really focusing on whether, for example, a nature of an action is completed. And if you speak a Slavic language, you know that, then you have your perfective verb, right? Pochitam kunigu, right? I read the whole book or something, okay? So this is kind of like a perfection. In Chinese, we're using le. In Japanese, we use ro, kang, ro. We have various ways that we take this from the characters, but these other languages, Thai, etc., have not used Chinese writing, so they don't, but they still have a way to indicate completed, ongoing, habitual, occurring just once. Okay, so they all mirror one another, all right? So the action here is, the meaning of the particles is not tense, like when it happened, but how it happened, in the sense of emphasizing how they unfold over time. Okay, so I'll give you some examples. The first one would be something that's completed or incomplete, or the experience having done some. Have you ever been to New York? Yes, I have, okay? So there's ways to express this, and the first one, I'll use an example from Indonesian and Malay first, because they basically use the same, okay? They have sudah, belum, and pernah. So we use sudah when something's already been finished, like akan pergi, akan makan sekarang, are you going to eat now? And there's a sudah, already ate, okay? And then belum is not yet. Okay, now this is an interesting cultural thing. In their culture, if they ask you, are you married? And you might say, if you think you can say tidak, which means no, they'll just what? You have to say belum. There's expectation, okay? Not yet, okay? So there's so many things like that. Yeah, you can't just say no. That's weird. They'll say, like, oh, what do you mean? You can't do that, okay? So if something is expected to you, you cannot just say, have you done it? Sudah? Telah? No, you can't say, tidak. No, belum. It's coming up, I'm doing it. Okay, then pernah. Saya pernah pergi ke Bali selancar 20 kali. I've been to Bali to go surfing 20 times. So, or pernah pergi ke Sulawesi. I've been to Sulawesi. Okay? So this establishes that. When we get to how do we do this? What do I have for next? Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples here. Excuse me, I kept keep turning around to look at this because I have to remember how I did it. But okay, we're going to using went, and then belum for has it gone, and then has been. Okay, so dia sudah pergi ke Jepang. Dia belum pergi ke Jepang. Dia pernah pergi ke Jepang. And then if I said, like, sudah pergi ke Jepang, and it would be kind of strange to say tidak, no. Because that means they're showing no desire to go to Japan at all. Okay? Belum. All right, someday I will go. You're getting the picture of how it's communicating? Okay. So it's very cultural based, the correct answer. Okay, so just like in Chinese, and we have a number of ways. So doing the same thing, he went to Japan. He hasn't gone to Japan yet, and he has been to Japan. So they could use le, and then hai mei for the belum, and then guo. There's other possibilities too, but let's just limit ourselves to here. So, ta chi liu bei, okay, so he went there, and ta hai mei chi liu bei hasn't been yet, and 他曾经去过日本. Okay, so 曾经 has ever been. Okay, it's not completely necessary. You can do without it. And then Vietnamese has it's the same form. We're seeing in every single of these languages. They're going to use da chữ, da tung. And then when you use the simple, you see the first one there, da is something completed, but da tung makes it so I have been, in that kind of feeling, okay? So you would say, anh ấy đã đi Nhật Bản. So he has been to Japan. Anh ấy chưa, not yet. Chưa đi Nhật Bản, hasn't gone yet. And anh ấy đã đi Nhật Bản, so has been there. Okay, and then moving on to Thai, we're going to have the same type of concept here with Leo, Yang Mai, and Khơi. And so, Kao Bai Ipun Leo, and Kao Yang Mai Dai, you can Yang Mai Dai Bai, or you can just simply Kao Yang Mai Bai Ipun. I accidentally said what I would say more naturally, but I thought it would be a little confusing if I put that in there too. Kao Khơi Bai Ipun, and again this Khơi here showing having done something in the past, experience of it. And then Lao does the same thing. Look, you have the same, almost sounds the same, okay? So I'm doing, the latest video I've been doing is comparing Lao and Thai, and I'm showing you that, again, like Czech, Slovak, Spanish, Portuguese, etc., all right? But perhaps it depends on your ear, okay? Because they have certain sounds that if you speak, for example, Spanish, you listen to Portuguese, and you hear something la gente, and they say a gente, and then you may not catch it, but you're saying the same thing, okay? So Lao people cannot say R, okay? Thai, Central Thai, they say like rip roy, rong ram, and then they say hong ham, so they use the H sound for it. But basically, you got 80% that is very similar. Okay, so in this case, we're using Leo. Okay, by Leo, he went to Ipun already. And then, but this one is different. The other one was Yang, and this is Yang Bo. Now, Bo is just the negative marker. In Thai, it's Mai. So it's also a question word. It's very interesting. If you say, how are you? Do you know how to say how are you in Thai? Sabadi Mai? Okay, in Lao, just put Bo there. Sabadi Bo. And then if you're not doing well, then you use a different tone and you say Bo. You say Mai Sabai. I'm not doing well. Now say it in Lao. Bo Sabai. Okay? So you just learn how to substitute words there. Okay, and then we have the same Khơi. Okay? Lao Khơi by Nippon. All right. Now let's take a look at how we would express desires or necessity or intentions or future ongoing actions. Okay, so first we'll go with the Chinese here. Now, there are quite a few ways to say this, all right? So, I mean, in the question time, you can add to them and say, hey, you didn't say this or that. That's fine, let's do it. Let's expand the knowledge, okay? But there's quite a few ways. And the first one here, using shang, is actually to think, okay? But when you say shang yao, I mean, so I think I would like to do something, okay? And then yao can mean I intend to, I need to, number of meanings, okay? So, 我想去呗. Okay, so as I said here, all right, so it's like to want, to need, so used quite emphatically, 想要 when you use it together. So it's a definite intention. So you see what is communicated here that's not necessarily communicated in, let's say, European languages? Right? There's a lot behind there. Just as I was pointing out that you cannot say no when you should say not yet, according to cultural custom, all right? So, but even in English, have you done it? Oh, not yet. You could say that, right? But it's more important in their culture in some cases. Okay, so here we have it for the other languages that we are looking at. Okay, so example, we have mun, doi mun di nepang. Okay, and then we have yak, chang yak by ipun. And then we have the same. Thai, look how, as Lao, look how close it is. Koi instead of chan or di chan or home. Koyak by Nipun. Okay, very similar. And then Indonesian and Malay can use the same things, ingin and mau, but Malay people usually use the hendak and they drop the first part and say nak. Okay, so in this case they might say saya. I use the mau to just show you saya mau pergi Japan would be exactly the same, but they might as well probably say saya nak pergi or hendak. Okay, so what about necessity? Again, I've already introduced yao to you, okay, and shang yao. But here it's more of a sense of I need, like need or must go, all right? So I have to or need to go to Japan. So 我要去日本. And then 赶快. So the gan is sort of by itself can have the meaning of I should or I must, but then 赶快 is stronger. All right, so 對趕快đi Nhật Bản, and then dong, and you can see that actually the Lao and the Thai are basically the same sound, a little bit different. I don't know, if you look at the alphabet, I don't know if that looks similar to you or not. They both come from Khmer. Or if you're used to reading Thai and you spend a couple hours learning to read Lao, you'll get it. All right, so it's not that, so you thought Cyrillic was difficult, right? Okay, so we have like, so Chan Dong Bai Yipun or Koi Dong Bai Yipun, okay, almost sounds the same. And then in this case, usually it's going to be exactly the same in Indonesian Malay, using harus pergi. Okay, now what about intentions, when you want to show intentions? So usually in Chinese, there's a number of ways you could do it, but you can say, da swan, okay? So if you know, people who know characters can see like the da is kind of like hitting when you play a game, you also da, and this one is in the sense of a calculation. So, 我打算去日本. And then here, so this one here, this next one, this is a big thing about, a tough one about Vietnamese, because when I read it, I have to choose whether I'm going to read northern, central, or southern, okay? And this is the difference. The first word there is, it looks like a D, but you see the second word has a D with a cross with it. That D with a cross with it is like the D we use in Europe. The other one is in the north, Z, and the south is Y, okay? So this would either be Y ding di, okay? So do y ding di Nhật Bản, or it would be doi zu ding ding di Nhật Bản. And then in Lao, we use Wang Peng, sorry, Thai, sorry, Chang Wang Peng by Yipun. Where do I have Lao? Oh, there it is, okay. Now, when I made this sentence, and I realized I just left it, but so we have Koi Gamlang Wan Pen by Upun. Now, it's the same thing, it's Wan Pen. Why do I have Gamlang there? Gamlang actually can mean strength, power, but it means it's an ongoing process, like the ing in English, okay? Ing, using ing. So it's stronger saying that I ing the intention of going to Japan, okay? It's very immediate. We could do the same in Thai. We could also do that to emphasize it. So Koi Gamlang Man Pien Ba Ipun. So Nyepun, it's almost the same word. Okay, Berniat is very Indonesian for that, Berniat Pergi, and Malay is also somewhat different. They're going to use Berhasrat. Berhasrat untuk. Untuk means for. Untuk saya, for me. Untuk Anda, for you, okay? So, saya berhasrat untuk pergi ke Ipun. All right, so we've gone through different, let's say, necessities, desire, etc., willingness, on and on. What about in the future? Okay, so even in European languages, a lot of European languages just use the present tense or the non-past to also show intention in the future. And then when you get to some Romance languages like Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, of course, you're going to have all the conjugation. They're the most complicated in Europe. They're the most expressive, okay? I think Portuguese is number one because it has a future subjunctive and Spanish doesn't, okay? Quando eu tiver dinheiro, vou comprar carro. Now it's quando eu tenho dinheiro, vou comprar um carro. Okay, so, and then next I would follow by Spanish, and then Italian would be less conjugations, wouldn't you say? In that case. All right, so when we're going to express the future, then we have just a single particle. And as you can see, okay, but again, in Chinese, you could even use yao in this case, but when you say hui, it's more like, really it's going to, more like I will go, okay? 我会去日本. But the thing with complicating this is when you say hui in Chinese, it means I am apt to do something. I am apt to wake up early on Mondays in order to da-da-da, okay? So it has a number of meanings, and you have to go by context. So these are not so straightforward. All these languages are extremely contextual in that sense. And then se is always going to be a future action. Okay, so doi se di nyepan. But I could say like tomorrow and that, and I could say that I wouldn't need to say it. But if I don't have a marker and I want to show it's a future, I'm going to use it. Okay, then you have ja ja for both Lao and Thai. Chanchabai Ipun, Kochabai Nippon. And then here, again, we have Malay and Indonesian producing the exact same sentence, akan pergi. Okay, so, and I already introduced Gamlang to you when I was talking about Lao, but let's, what something is ongoing, ing, whether it was in the past or the future and such. Okay, so here we have various possibilities. Look at the Chinese ones I gave you. There's even more than that. They all have slight differences. I won't go through them all, but then you have here Tsai. When Tsai is also for Li Tsai Narli, where are you? 我现在在这里在 Polyglot gathering in Prague. Okay, so it's showing a state that you're in. All right. So and then you have Zheng. Now, people who know characters also would know that this is the one that kind of like truly. And also, when you count to, like, I think most European countries, when you do 5, do you do this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah? Okay, so when you write Chinese characters, there's a certain order, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, there's 5 up there. Wait a second. Wait a second. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you do that, and then you get the same thing, result like that, okay? So you put them together, truly now, 正在, it's going on right now, 我正在去日本. And then the yeah, I think I explained the meaning later. I must have it later, so I'll wait for a minute on that one. Okay, and then, so Vietnamese uses dang, all right? So, doi dang din Nhật Bản, so today. So this dang here, and all of these, it's not necessarily just limited, I'm doing it right now. You could be telling this story, like, I was in the process of eating dinner when you rudely opened the door and da-da-da, something like that, okay? You can still, so it's showing a continuous action, whatever the tense is. Then you'd have to set it with context, all right? So again, you're forming a different way of looking at the world, if you get so used to verb conjugations, if Spanish or Italian or Portuguese especially is your mother tongue, if you've learned other languages, you're used to it. English is actually very poor in tenses. Okay, you might, that's a long argument. I won't get into it, but basically it has past, and we can put in the questions if you want to argue about it, okay? But basically it has past and non-past, all right? So it's also using aspectual markers in English. So here, then in Thai, again, just like in Lao I mentioned before, gamlang means power. So gamlang bai, going now, and same way, gamlang bai. And then Malay and Indonesian will use the same, sedang pergi. Okay. Now, so that covers, not completely, I'm just introducing it to you. That gives you the way to deal with a language that doesn't have inflections. So therefore, no tense markers, all right? Okay? Now, you may be thinking, that's not a big deal, but I totally disagree. I've gone through it. Let me give you a little bit of history in this case, okay? So, the language I've spoken most in my life is Japanese, but not my first language. My first two languages are English and Cubano, because I grew up in South Florida. I left at 18, I went to Colombia, where in Colombia, in Español, I studied, j'étudiais le français à l'Alliance française, ich habe Deutsch de Goethe studiert, e aprendi português no Instituto Brasileiro de Escritura. And then I studied in Switzerland. And then I was in Yugoslavia, and I learned some Croatian, etc., and that was politically correct at that time. And then I was in the old Soviet Union. I тогда я говорил по-русски, я учил русский язык, я был там 3 раза. И потом был в Польше, I was in Poland for 2 years. So if you want to jump into a Slavic language, I don't recommend Polish as your first one. Okay, so it wasn't mine, and I was thankful that I knew Russian and the other ones before, so I got used to cases. Okay, so later in life, when I immigrated to Japan at age 25 in 1981, so I've been there 43 years, and I started studying, I learned Japanese in Poland. And then I went to, when I got there, I went to university to study Chinese literature after teaching myself Chinese, okay? So that was my next step. And then after that, I started, well, actually, Thai was the first one. I started learning it. I went from Warsaw to Bangkok in June 6, 1981. And I got there and I started learning Thai. So actually, that's my first one, but I didn't get that far. So imagine this is a little bit off topic. 1981 in Poland, Poznan, or even Warsaw, wherever. What do you see walking around the streets? Blonde hair, light-colored eyes. I got to Bangkok, and I got on the bus. I saw a sea of beautiful jet black hair. And wow, this is really something. Wow, this is Asia. This is really exotic. I haven't seen anything like this. And so I was hooked. So I've been there ever since. And then out of all the cultures I've been to, I clicked with Japan the best, so I became a Japanese citizen. And yeah, so the other languages. So after learning Chinese, then I went for Thai, because I did my PhD involving Japanese companies in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, et cetera. Long story, but Thai is the next one I started learning around 25 years ago. And I wound up writing a book in Thai about Japanese companies in Thailand. So I learned it quite deeply. And that was very easy to learn Lao. Going to Laos, you pick up a textbook. I mean, it's like you speak Slovak, and then, you know, you're going to make it Czech by studying. At least you can communicate, right? You study 10, 20 hours, and you got everything to basic communication. Okay, so then what? Okay, so Indonesian Malay. Malay was the first one I heard and used, but then I loved surfing, so I went to Bali around 20 times. And then also Java, Sumatra, etc. So my Indonesian became much stronger, and then I started writing about the differences between the two, and I'll do another video on that. Okay, so that's what have I noticed through that process? I noticed how easy it is to learn the language. So I have a language exchange partner from Vietnam, and I said to her, I said, okay, first I was teaching her Spanish, and she was helping with Vietnamese and actually translated my book into Vietnamese. And I said to her, okay, we're going to study Thai. Thai? Why Thai? No, we're going to say Thai, Indonesian, Malay. It's ASEAN. It'll give you, opportunity in the future. Really? Yeah, you're going to learn it. Come on, let's go. Thai. Look at how it's written. There's no space here. I spaced it out for you, but there's no punctuation in Thai. It just runs straight. You can end the sentence whatever you want to, etc. Okay? And then not only that, but there's 16 consonant sounds in Thai, which drop down to 6 if they come at the end of the syllable. So, for example, have you heard in Thai, Sawadee Krap, Sawadee? Is there a T in that? If you write it? No, there's no T. Sawat, S becomes T on the second syllable, okay? So you have to know how to read it, which is the second syllable, okay, and how to change it. R becomes N, okay? Things like that. So, but if you learn Korean, anybody know Korean? Because Korean does the same thing, whether you realize it or not. Most of mirrors that. Okay, so what did I notice? I just want to get through this before I get to this part here, because I want to really press upon you that it's not just, hey, I have to learn that in Vietnamese is doi se, and then akan in Indonesian Malay. How does that help? The fact that I've learned Chinese now. It's your neural networks. You have a feeling about how it works. You're shaking your head. You must speak one of these languages. And you go to the next one, right? And it's just natural. And so my exchange student, my exchange partner, she said, oh, wow, I can understand that. That makes sense. Yeah. And then made the right guesses about which aspect particle to use and everything, because it mirrors. You see things that way. You don't bother trying to find things if you're used to another language where you have tense and inflection. You know when it's not necessary. You know, people, like, they learn how to say da, have done something, and then new learners will use da every time it's past tense. No, it's not necessary. We understand, and you can do it for emphasis, okay? So you get a certain mindset, and they function pretty much the same across these languages. And I'm going to show you this one is also cultural. Okay, so look, lack of plural forms of inanimate nouns. What does that mean? Okay, actually we have that in Japanese too, don't we? So is there a difference between I forgot my book and I forgot my books? Hon o wasareta? Hon tachi to iwanai desho, sore hita tachi dake desho, hon wasareta. Okay, so in Japanese and Korean we don't say, there's no way to say I forgot my books. It doesn't exist. We only have plural for animate. And we can double like in Indonesian, but the hitobito, but the meaning is different. It has a different nuance, okay? So the whole concept of plural is different. Why? Well, because of the worldview. So there's some experiments you can take a look at that you can have two objects. One made of clay, one made of wood. Sorry, you need three objects, okay? And so let's say you have two objects made of clay and one made of wood. The one that's made of wood, the shape of it looks like the one that you're based on, that you're testing on, right? So it's a certain design and it looks like it, okay? But the other material, so the wooden one looks like the clay model, but Asians will say, which one is more like? They'll choose the clay one. Why? Because they're both made of clay. So it's a substance. And then Westerners normally will say, no, they're the same shape. They're more similar, okay? So why would we need to indicate the difference between book and books? Know what you're talking about. I mean, you can in all these languages, if I said I forgot my book, so in Japanese, if you said I forgot my 4 textbooks, you could do it, right? Okay. So we were going to put in a counter and everything. And by the way, all these languages use counters, which you have to use. Okay. So is it long, short, fat, skinny? Big, small? Is it something that floats, etc.? They're all like a ship and a plane will have the same counter. Okay. Why is it going that way? I go this way. Okay. So remain the same. And again, as I said, you could use numerical indicators, but in that case, you have to use the qualifying words, okay? Iben shu, you have to have it. If it's a book for shu, you have to iben, okay? Isatsu hon in Japanese, again, we have Japanese, Korean. In this case, Japanese, Korean fit in there. They're not in this because Japanese and Korean are extremely inflective. We have many verbal inflections, but we don't conjugate, we don't have inflections for person. I, you, he, she, we, they, it's always the same. It's more of aspect and tense and politeness, etc. Okay. So yeah, as an example I gave you here. So you just have book here. There's no way to make that books. Nothing you can add to it. I can say the iben shu, so one book. Or I can say hen do shu. There's many books. That's fine, all right? But we haven't changed book, have we? Okay, it's going to be straight. Like now, so as I said, I talk about plural. Okay, I mean, doubling the word like in Japanese is hitobito. Is hito and hitobito exactly more than hitotachi? It might be the plural. That is an animate. We have animate plurals in these languages too. Okay, for people, etc. Just like you, we, they, I. Okay, I, we, etc. Now, what about this one? Buku, buku, buku. Buku, buku, yeah, it does make it plural, and then sometimes it is similar usage as it is in European languages, but other times not. Okay, so we have, for example, anak is child, and so we have anak-anak. So, for example, anak-anak bermain di luar. The children are playing outside. Di mana anak sekarang? Where are the children now? Di luar bermain, anak-anak. And then if we say, but it can also mean anak-anak da-da-da-da, so it means various type of children, da-da-da, okay? So it's not limited to just making plurals. Okay, so as I said, that East and Southeast Asian cultures have a greater focus on the substance of things rather than viewing them as discrete objects. So then you have a continuous collective or general nature of entities. While in the West, we tend to categorize and differentiate objects as distinct entities, different worldview. Okay, the next one. How am I doing on time? What time is it now? Okay, 6:30. Okay, it's taking a lot longer than I thought. I should go faster so the questions. Okay, so getting to the last one, there's no to be. It's like говорите по-русски, знаете, да? Это красивее, okay? You don't have they don't even have present tense they normally use. You never use to be when you have an adjective. They function as verbs. Even in Japanese and in Korean. In Korean and Japanese, we conjugate adjectives. Atsukata, it was hot. Okay, atsukaro, it should be hot, right? Atsukattara ikimasen. If it is hot, I won't go. We can do that just with the conjugation, okay? But you don't have that in these other languages. Okay, all right, so here, if I said, you're beautiful, then that's fine. It's a predicate adjective. I don't need is. I can't use is, okay? Okay, oh yeah. For example, in Thailand, sometimes they say, how do you say you're beautiful? And they'll say, kun ben sway. Doesn't make sense. Okay, ben is to be. But if you say, kun ben puing sway, all right, you're a beautiful woman. Okay. So I give you all those examples in each one. I wanted a time for questions, and I really spent too much time talking, in Indonesian Malay, they use it, but they often drop this even if you're saying you're beautiful. Okay, you're a very intelligent person. They'll often drop the equivalent to be. Okay, I want to stop it there. I think I've gone through most of it, all right? Because I'm sorry, I wanted to leave more time for questions. Okay, so we'll stop there. Question time? Oh, they're on the screen, okay. Okay, so what you should do is you got to pick one. And most people are going to pick Thai because the number of speakers. Okay, but there's about 26 million Lao speakers, but there's only 6 of them in Laos. Where are the other ones? Thailand, okay? So about one third of Thai speak Lao, not Thai, as the first language, all right? They call it Isan. Political reasons, it's a long story. But learn Thai, I would go for Thai first, probably you'd use, and then learn Thai comparing sentences, okay? All right, so how should I say? Okay, now I happen to work for Ling app now, so open an app like Ling or everything that has both languages. And as you learn one language, if you learn Thai well enough, study Lao in Thai, just as I was showing you here, okay? And then you'll see it. Just like study, if you're learning Portuguese and you're an English speaker, study Portuguese, and you speak Spanish, study Portuguese and Spanish, not English. Okay. Also, you speak something different, very impressive, thank you. Okay, it's not so impressive, okay? Yeah, I've studied 47 languages, but in 2 months I'm 68 years old, okay? And 18 I left the United States. And I spoke Spanish and English at that time. If you learn one language a year, you should be speaking much more than I do, all right? And then you have cross languages, okay? You can, tomorrow I'll talk about learning 11 to 19 Slavic languages, or at least understanding them. How do you apply? You have to meet certain criteria to become a Japanese citizen. Some people are just born that way. Some people have the honor to have that happen by going through the whole process, which takes about 1.5 years and a lot of checks on you. Yes, I studied languages simultaneously. Again, cuando yo estaba en Bogotá, yo estaba estudiando francés y portugués en los institutos, así que eso fue muy bueno. Yo creo que más que todo, entiende, ¿no? As I was studying in Spanish for that, they're in the same language. I encourage it, okay? But you train your mind, and because I've been doing that for so many decades, it's easy for me, all right? So I studied Dutch and Afrikaans, all right? But it's a little bit crazy there. How did you end up learning and practicing language? I kept traveling a lot, so I've been to 99 countries. Can I do a plug for my book? I have a book called Life in 30 Languages. If you're interested, go to polyglotdreams.com. Polyglot Dreams is my YouTube channel. The other that I'm being posted on is the Ling channel. They hired me to post videos for them now, which is a great pleasure because I love doing comparison with their app between languages. I just finished Indonesian Malay, now I'm doing Thai Lao. Any tips for beginners in these languages? Well, it depends on all these languages. Okay, if you're talking about this set here, which one should you start with? You should start with the one you're most interested in. And so Chinese is gonna, if you go to Chinese, then maybe you're gonna learn how to read pinyin first instead of the characters, right? Okay, if you study Thai first, do not try to learn with the transliteration, sorry. You have to learn the Thai alphabet because there's no, or maybe IPA people will shoot me. But that IPA confused me much more than it did to just learn how to read and write Thai and Lao, okay? Because Khoi, how do you write Khoi? I don't know. Okay, 1 minute left. So do you think having a good pronunciation is important? Yes, very much so, because other people will not understand you. So people, you feel more part of the community, and then they also believe in you, so you believe in yourself. You have more confidence. Doesn't Mandarin sometimes have plural nouns? Yes, it does, but I said that's an animate woman. Okay, Tamen, that's also animate. How do you maintain this amount of languages? You don't try to if you try to maintain, you go crazy. So what I do is, whenever I feel like doing something in that language, watch a movie, whatever, I do it. Before coming here, what did I do? I said I speak Polish. I want to learn Czech. So I'm going through here. Polish is my strongest Slavic language, and so I base it on that. And it shows me the differences, and it reminds me. So I know what to say. Okay, I also then say Slovak, so I'll use both that way. And how do you acquire that? Okay, no more? Is that it? Okay, oh, wait. How much effort do you put into these learning tones? Okay, so the tones are very important for certain languages like Mandarin, extremely important, and it doesn't take you that long to catch on to them. There are some changes when they're combined together. Thai is a little bit tougher. The hardest is Vietnamese tones because they also have gullible stops up and down, like hiu, vang, and loi, and things like that. So the first time I listened to Pimsleur, it said something like, sing loi. I said, what? And even though I spoke a total language, I had never heard a glottal stop as a tone. Yeah, it's important, but even in the south of Vietnam, they're basically, it's the same as Mandarin because they have hong zao or hong yao, which means no tone. Now, if you speak Putonghua, you know there's 4 tones plus no tone, right? That's 5. Then you have the same as Southern Vietnamese, but they're different quality, okay? And then you have 6 in the north. It's Cantonese is your key. We do it. Cantonese is your key to good pronunciation in Vietnamese, Japanese, and Korean. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.